Yeah, so welcome back to class. In the first video, we were looking at the first 3 points. So we defined the equilibrium conditions, we derived the slope of the curves, and we determined the equilibrium. This was a very important part, but the most interesting part, this will be derived in the next few steps, because now we want to find out how is an exogenous shock digested, and we will start with an expansionary monetary policy. So what happens if the central bank increases money supply? This will be derived with slide number 18, where you can see in the first step the initial equilibrium, and now the central bank increases money supply. So money supply is larger than before. Hence, we hit the LM curve at a different point so that you can see that prices go up. And what also is important, from the right part of the diagram, we get the information that the exchange rate increases. An increase of the exchange rate symbolizes a depreciation of the domestic currency, and hence an increase in money supply leads to an increase in the goods prices, and it also leads to an increase of the exchange rate, a depreciation of the domestic currency. So in case that the central bank increases money supply, this will lead to inflation. The internal value of the currency is deteriorated, and also the external value of the currency is deteriorated. So let's try to confirm this graphical result by also computing the multiplier. Hence, we have to shift from the two equations into a system of matrices and vectors. So we have to sort the variables in a way that we have the endogenous variables on the left-hand side and the exogenous variables on the right-hand side of the equation. Also here, it is very important that we know which variables are endogenous, which variables are exogenous. So in the first equation, we put E on the other hand side of the equation. So we get a -1 times E on the left hand side. E is not included in the second equation, and therefore we are inserting 0 times E into the second equation. Afterwards, we can write these two equations into a system of matrices and vectors. We have a coefficient vector with a 1, -1, 1, and 0. We have a vector of the two unknowns, P and E. And on the right-hand side of the equation, we have the solution vector with all the exogenous variables. In the next step, we take the total differential once more and we write a D in front of each variable. In the next step, we have to identify the shock. We are interested in the effects of an expansionary monetary policy. So dm is larger than 0. All other variables are kept constant so that their changes are equal to 0. Hence, we get to the last equation on the slide. The solution vector consists out of a 0 and a dm, so this is where the shock occurs. In the first step, I would like to compute the price multiplier of an expansionary monetary policy. The price variable, or to be precise, the change in prices, is located on the first position of the vector of the two unknowns. Therefore, Cramer's rule tells you that you should take the solution vector, 0 and dm, and insert it in the first column of the coefficient vector. And then Cramer's rule tells you compute the determinant of the changed coefficient matrix and divide it by the determinant of the unchanged coefficient matrix. Let's compute the determinant of the denominator of the numerator. We multiply through the elements on the main diagonal, 0 times 0, minus the elements on the side diagonal, dm times -1. This gives us a dm in the numerator of this fraction. The determinant of the denominator is computed in the same way. The product of the main diagonal, 1 times 0, minus the elements on the side diagonal, minus 1 times minus 1. Hence, the denominator takes a value of 1, and then we get for the price multiplier, dp over dm is equal to 1. This indicates that when the central bank increases money supply by 10%, goods prices will also increase by 10%. So we have a proportional reaction of the price level with respect to this monetary shock. In a second step, we can compute the exchange rate multiplier of an expansionary monetary policy. The change of the exchange rate, dE, is located on the second position of the vector of the two unknowns. Therefore, the idea is we take the solution vector and insert the solution vector into the second column of the coefficient matrix. The 0 and the dm are located now in the second column of the coefficient matrix, and we apply Cramer's rule, and Cramer's rule tells you compute the determinant of the changed coefficient matrix and divide it by the determinant of the unchanged coefficient matrix. So 1 times dm minus 1 times 0 in the numerator of this fraction, and 1 times 0 minus 1 times minus 1 in the denominator of this fraction. The minus signs in the denominator will cancel out. We get the information that dE is equal to dm over 1. When we put dm on the other hand side of the equation, we get for the exchange rate multiplier that this is also equal to 1. dE over dm is equal to 1. So in case that the central bank increases money supply by 10%, the exchange rate will also react by 10% and will increase by 10%. Let's conclude with respect to the monetary policy. An increase in the nominal money supply leads to an increase in prices and the nominal exchange rate on a 1-to-1 basis. The real exchange rate is constant. This confirms the so-called classical dichotomy. Money is neutral, so money has no real effects. An expansionary monetary policy only influences nominal variables, but not the real variables. The real variables are not affected by the monetary policy. So now we have talked about the expansionary monetary policy of the central bank. This is a very important shock when you think about what's going on in Venezuela right now. It is a case that the central bank is printing money. It is a case that the inflation rate is very high, and also the external value of the Venezuelan bolivar is deteriorating. So this kind of shock is very important also in the real world. You can read about this shock in the Krugman-Opsahl-Militz textbook. But what is not displayed in this textbook is how a fiscal policy affects the endogenous variables. This is also a very important question, and I will solve this question in the next video. Thank you very much.